it than just a technology platform. I think it's difficult to just drop in a technology platform and say, here you go. What I'm starting to realize is there's actually a lot of like social structures that are involved with us to organize things at scale. Like there's a part of me, you know, of this like really free spirit, organic, everything's just going to naturally organize itself. There's a part of me that still wants to believe that a lot. But then there's this other part of like, yeah, actually a little bit of structure is actually kind of helpful. So I'm really kind of trying to learn from these different intentional communities, learn from like the hummingbird community, learn from Dom and Horror, and learn from my own active participation in the intentional community that I'm a part of, to kind of learn really what is it that we need in community? What are the new types of structures? What do they look like? Do some of them already exist already? Do new ones need to be made? And how do we create a technology that's reflective of what we really need? So I've been shifting a little bit more in that avenue, and I'm starting to feel like this desire to like slow down a bit. And take it slow and develop it organically. So yeah, I could keep going down this path, but I'm actually really interested in getting to know you a little bit, your story, where you came from and what inspired you to do Coeo.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you my background going kind of way back really. So I going back to sort of education days before I really knew what was going on in the world. I did a master's degree in physics, so that's kind of my background. That was in London, and then after that, I kind of didn't really know what to do, so I went into website development, because it kind of, I guess I was kind of a bit unusual in the academic science kind of world, in that I had an artistic side to me as well, which was quite unusual. Yeah. And so I kind of saw web development as being a sort of an opportunity for me to apply my kind of scientific side of things, but also you know, have a bit of design input and, you know, make things look nice as well. So it appealed to me from both sides really. So I just taught myself to build websites. This was back in, I guess, 2000, so 17 years ago. Yeah, I've been working for building websites ever since as a job, day job. And I guess about 10 years ago or so, I sort of went through an awakening, like a lot of us have done. I went from a very academic, mainstream science kind of view of the world, to obviously a much more open-minded view, shall we say. But I do also very much still value my kind of academic scientific background. I think it has a lot of value, and it has a lot of value that a lot of people in the kind of circles that we move in tend to maybe lack that kind of academic, kind of more grounded kind of side of things. So I think actually that's quite an important role that I can kind of bring to things, is sort of, you know, grounding things and bringing a bit of reality back into things, because
yeah, feet on the ground, head in the clouds.
Yeah. So so what happened was, I mean, my awakening happened on 9/11, and that was again completely based on my background as a physicist, because I saw what happened on 9/11, and straight away I knew from a physics point of view that things didn't add up to, you know, what we were being told about what happened on 9/11. And from there, I kind of went through, you know, I just started sort of looking at things from a very different view. I suddenly realized that what we were being told was not necessarily the truth a lot of the time, you know, by the sort of mainstream. And from there, it's just, you know, been a journey, I guess, you know, sort of for the last 10 years. About 5 years ago or so, I started to think how, you know, what I could do as a website developer to sort of contribute, if you like. And the problem that I experienced myself was I'm in quite a different position to you. You're kind of living it, in that you're obviously living in a community and things. I'm living a much more mainstream life, as in the sense that I'm married, I've got 2 kids. You know, I live. You know, I've got a mortgage to pay. I'm very much in a sort of more mainstream situation, and I have a job. You know, I have to work work to pay the mortgage and support the family. So I was in this situation where I felt very isolated. You know, I didn't really know anybody in the real world. I knew a lot of people online on Facebook and things. I was a member of a lot of groups on Facebook and things, but I didn't know anyone in the real world on the ground who I could talk to about these things.
Yeah.
So my original concept was extremely simple. It was just have a map, you know, use Google Maps. Everybody who's quote unquote awake or aware or conscious or whatever you want to call it, just puts a pin in the map, and it's just a tool to find other people in your community who you can actually connect with. That was the original concept, and it was very simple. And from there, it kind of just evolved into what people were doing. They were going onto the website. They were saying, this is a good idea. Yeah, I want to find out other people in my area. They were putting their pin on the map, you know, saying this is where I am. And then they were never coming back to the website. There was no reason for them to ever come back to it.
Yeah.
So I had to start building in more sort of reason for people to come back to the website. And it kind of evolved into a sort of full-blown social networking site. And I kind of am trying not to lose sight of that the original objective, which is really about connecting people locally, you know, finding other people close to you who you can collaborate with, connect with, even if it's just someone, you know, just someone you can meet for a coffee or whatever and talk to people. So that's kind of the story of how this website came about. It's obviously grown a lot since that original sort of idea. And it's all, I've done the whole thing on my own, you know, it's just been my own work in the evenings, in my spare time, up until about a year ago. I started asking for donations, and I don't get much in the way of donations, but what I do get, I used to justify cutting my employment down to 4 days a week, which gives me 1 day a week to work on the website. And I also obviously work on it still in the evenings, and at weekends and things like that, as well as, you know, family stuff. So it doesn't give me much time. Now where I'm at with it right now is it's suddenly growing very fast. There's a lot of people suddenly interested in collaborating, and people want to do different things with it. You know, some people are coming to me and saying, I'm a developer, or I have a developer who's a real hotshot developer. I want to work with you. And there's people wanting to work with me. There's people wanting to collaborate, people wanting to use the platform for different things, which are things that I hadn't really ever planned for it.
Yeah.
And so at the moment, I'm really at a sort of restructuring stage. Because of the way the website evolved, I never envisaged it would ever be what it is now. And for that reason, when I started building it, you know, I didn't have a long-term plan. So, you know, databasing and technology and stuff, you know, I wouldn't have built it like I did if I'd known what it was going to be.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, so at the moment, the website has now grown to a point where it's really starting to struggle from a technological point of view in terms of the way it's built around a MySQL database, you know, relational database, which really can't handle what I'm trying to do with it now. So at the moment, I'm going through a major restructuring. I'm slowly migrating across to a NoSQL database, and
Have you picked one?
at the moment I'm working with Mongo.
That's what I'm working with right now too. But long term, over 1 million users, I don't think that's going to be a solution unless
Yeah.
we do distributed internet to do the hosting.
Yeah.
It works for pretty large collections and it gets the job done for a lot. For example, we use it for the real-time race tracking to do events like the New York Marathon. That has 250,000, 500,000 users in a couple days. So it can get to pretty large scale, but anything more than 1, 5, 10 million people, I think it's going to struggle. That's what I've seen from different people online. So yeah, just sharing that perspective.
Yeah,
It's a great intermediary time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I had a look at Elastic as well, Elasticsearch. But yeah, I'm going with Mongo at the moment. But the thing is, I think once it's in that type of database structure, it becomes much easier to migrate to different things. So at the moment, the challenge is getting the data out of a relational MySQL database into Mongo. And once that's done, I'm obviously, it's going to be a bit of a hybrid at the moment initially. Some stuff I'm going to keep doing with MySQL in terms of like the user authentication side of things, and what I want to do, I want to keep the user authentication in a separate database that's probably will stay with MySQL, and then all the Mongo stuff can then be kind of more open sourced through APIs and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, and obviously that leads me right into the other thing I'm working on, which is I'm obviously working on building an API so that other websites, potentially your website, whatever people want to do with it, whether they want to develop mobile apps, things like that, can then start tapping into my database and open source through an API, kind of open source development of all sorts of sort of plugins for it and add-ons, and that becomes much easier once I'm away from the relational structured database. Once it's in Mongo, if someone wants to develop an app that plugs into Coeo that stores some random data about users and things, it's much more flexible. So
yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm heading at the moment, and it's just a bit of a struggle really to sort of keep up with everything that people want me to do with the website now, and all the existing users, and I mean, I've got groups using it, the Ubuntu movement. I've got various other groups using it, who, they're using it now and it's live for them. They've got 10,000 members using it. So I've got to keep it working for them at the same time as evolving it into something else. So it's a bit of a balancing act at the moment.
Yeah, it's tough working with I mean, I look at it as it's a living system in evolution. And so it's like understanding where you're at and where you want to go and how to get from A to B in a contiguous way.
Yeah. And I mean, I always, I think a lot of these projects that I've seen, a lot of similar projects, I've talked to the guys at NewMap and other projects, and a lot of them are going along the line, the route of building something, testing it, beta testing it, refining it before they launch it. I kind of went headlong into kind of launching something right at the beginning. It was very basic, and I've kind of been working on a live system ever since, really. It's not really much in the way of testing and stuff. I just do things on the live site because I don't have time to have like development servers and beta testing and stuff. I've just got to get on with it. So it's all a bit kind of not the most traditional way of developing things, I think.
Yeah, but a bit on the ballsy side. But yeah,
it's interesting as well. It's interesting as well to hear about what you do. You said you do timing for races.
So software. We work with timing companies. So we've done work with the New York Marathon, Chicago Marathon, San Francisco Marathon. The app that I've built for them, pretty much from the ground up, I have a whole framework for packaging HTML5 apps to publish to iOS and Android stores. which is essentially, I mean, because I freelance the work, it's also, you know, I can use it for other projects and I use it for other projects.
Nice.
And I would love to make that more open source and available to members in the community because, you know, I think apps and having that type of technology in your pocket, it's a big difference. You know, most traffic these days, it's like over 50% comes from phones. But
I mean, obviously that's actually something I've not got any experience in is mobile apps.
okay.
And it's something obviously Coeo needs. You know, Coeo needs a mobile app. And obviously, again, once I create an API to interact with the data, then, you know, someone else can create an app for me and, you know, tap into the API and stuff. It should be really easy. So.
Yeah, well, and it seems like what you've built with Coeo so far is really mobile optimized. Like you can use it in a mobile browser. It's just
oh yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah, I've done that. I mean, I'd like to have a proper app just because there are things you can't do with the browser, like, you know, push notifications and things would be really nice, especially with the sort of, you know, the sort of messaging and stuff side of it. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting about your job because I probably use your stuff. I don't know if you can see the bike on the background,
Yeah.
but I'm an athlete, so I run marathons and triathlons. So I've probably experienced your stuff from an end user.
Do you do Ironmans?
Yeah, I do Ironman. Yeah.
We just got picked up within the last week. We got a contract with them that are going to start using our tracking software.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll probably see it.
Brilliant. Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, it's just I mean, I think it sounds to me like you've got what I've found is, I think, because I'm not probably quite as close as you are to being in a community, you know, I'm kind of seeing, I'm not living it myself. You know, I can theorize about what, you know, the sort of the ideal world, but I'm not actually, I always feel a bit hypocritical because I'm not living the, you know, I'm preaching about people should, you know, be getting off grid and all these things, and I'm not actually doing it myself. But what frustrates me a bit is that people, I find people are very enthusiastic, very good at talking online, lots of activity on Facebook, lots of activity on Coeo, but then when it actually comes to doing something physical in the real world, you know, actually, even if it's just going for a meeting and down the local pub or something, people just don't seem to want to take that next step. It's like, and I that's my biggest challenge, and I think is probably the side of things that you're actually focusing more on, which is actually not so much the technology side, but, you know, the more social, you know, problems of actually activating people, because that's, you know, I've got the technology side sussed. I can build the website. I just don't know how to actually get people to use it in the way I want them to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really interesting challenge. And boy, and working with this intentional community for the last 2 years, it's been a lot of work and a lot of things that I never would have thought about. You know, I don't know, I had for the longest time growing up, I didn't really have that many close friends. And then I made a very conscious choice in my life. I'm like, no, I actually want to have like people around me. I want to share my story. I want to be who I am. I don't want to seclude myself or anything like that. But in that process, I realized just how important it was to get to know people and to push the edges, you know, of the places that feel uncomfortable. And in this intentional community, it's like, for a while, I had some very close friends who had very similar viewpoints as me, and that's all great and dandy and everything. But I think it's just repeating the same problem that what Facebook essentially is. It's an echo chamber. It creates these groups of people who are identical around you, and you don't hear these different viewpoints. Yeah. And I think that's one of the core issues with our world right now. Love to, at some point, I don't know if we have enough time on the call today, but go into a philosophy I have around quantum mechanics and like double slit experiments, and like talking about Alex Gray and the sacred mirrors, and how having multiple viewpoints around us can help us to see ourselves more clearly. And anyway, in that process, in this community, people that I, think are really awesome, but wouldn't have generally hung out with regularly. But it's kind of pushing that edge with myself and like, wow, there's actually like conflict that comes up. There's a lot of really good perspectives that I wouldn't have generally heard that come up, but it all is like, pushing edge a little bit. And, I think that's, from an energetic standpoint, what I hear you speaking of, a lot of people at first get into this place of having the ideas and the visions and speaking it. It's kind of up here in the chakra system. It's coming from the infinite and it's coming down, and it's a process to actually bring that into manifest reality, to go more from the vision and speaking to actually, finding a love within yourself to do it, and the willpower to do it, and the community around you, and bring that to physical reality. There's energetics that are it takes a while to actually bring that to reality. And I think in general, I think the process that we're all going through right now, being able to pull that infinite and ground it into reality. And I think that's one of the reasons why, in hearing you speak earlier, I found such resonance, because my background is in chemical and biomolecular engineering. And so very hardcore science background. And I grew up that way. It's like everything, science will explain everything.
Oh yeah, totally.
And I mean, it was actually from a couple psychedelic experiences that I was like, wow, there's actually a lot that seemingly I'm experiencing that science isn't telling me. Like, I can maybe use the scientific method to kind of understand it and put that feedback and kind of try to understand in that way, and use my body as an instrument to understand the reality. But, it's like, I realized like science is incredibly crucial and important in understanding and keeping grounded into reality, but it seems to neglect the infinite, the expanse, the spirit, and I reflect back to this book that I was reading, and one of the opening chapters that we're talking about there being two schools of philosophy about 2,500 years ago: the Pythagorean school of thought. Everything is shapes. You can break things down to its component geometries. And this is actually where science has come from. Science comes from the Latin root psi, to cut, scissors. Science is all about cutting things to its component parts, which has a lot of value in it. And I'm not disagreeing with that. But the other school of thought, which has been entirely neglected, and I think the type of thought that we're coming back to, is a living system. It's a living system inside of a living system inside of a living system. Our cell is a living system inside of our body, inside of in the earth, in the universe, living systems. And I think that's where we're kind of coming back to. And kind of like what you were speaking to, I love finding these parallels and analogies, but like you using MySQL and a NoSQL kind of in parallel, because they both have value, and working together they can complement themselves more than they can by alone. And I think that's exactly kind of what's coming back around, of this whole systems thinking integrated with science. And I think it's both of those working in tandem together, and balanced together, that creates something greater than either individual. And that's why I have this really strong curiosity in speaking with you and hearing more of your story and more of your intention of where Coeo has gone, where can this, where I feel like there's a really deep synergy here. And like, where does this lie, and how can we move forward and build something greater than either of us could do individually? Because I think we both have amazing talents as developers, but the more I think that we can support each other, the greater the things that we can accomplish. And I think that's just in general what community is about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm always up for collaborating. I think it's interesting because I've spoken to quite a few different groups who are doing similar things. I've spoken to a guy from have you heard of Coeo?
Yeah, James.
Yeah, I've spoken to Coeo. Is it Simon?
I was talking to James. I think Simon is James's younger brother.
Okay, yeah, I spoke to Simon at Coeo. I've spoken to the guys at GroupUp. I've spoken to various other individuals mostly, but some of them small groups that are all trying to do very much what you and me are both doing. And I think and I'm guilty of this as well. I think there's a reluctance to collaborate because there's still this slight kind of competition thing, not competition thing, but like, you know, like Coeo is like my baby. I've been developing it for like, you know, 5 years, and obviously you've got an attachment to your website, and obviously when I spoke to Simon, you know, he was very much attached to Weco. It's his baby that he's been, and I think this is sort of holding us back a little bit from collaborating, is we all want it to be our baby, that's the one that kind of, you know, the one that works, if you like, and I mean, that's very much what I want to do is I'm very much trying to build the Coeo back end in a way where it can really integrate with other platforms. You know, so if Simon wants to build Weco, you know, his objects in Weco, whatever they are, can be sent to the Coeo database and vice versa. You know, I want us to be able to all have our individual platforms. I don't think we just, you know, I don't want just Coeo. I don't want Coeo to be the only one. I want there to be these other platforms, because different platforms will appeal to different people. You know, your website will appeal to one group of people, and Weco will probably appeal to others. I think, you know, NewMap is a good example, because I think NewMap is so different from anything else that it will probably only appeal to a very small number of people. But those people, it will really appeal to a lot and work for them. So I think it's important that we all have our separate websites. But if we can get all our websites talking to each other as efficiently as possible, then you know, I think we can all support each other. I don't think it's you know, I don't think we don't want to sort of say, oh, we're going to merge our projects. You know, we're going to merge GroupUp and Coeo to make it into one platform, because I think it's important that we actually have our own platforms. But I think if your pages, what you call pages, I think in GroupUp, can then be fed through into my database, and they will become what I call circles in Coeo. And our circles and pages, I think, are probably the same thing. So, you know, when someone creates a page in GroupUp, it could create it as a circle in Coeo. When someone creates a circle in Coeo, it could create a page in GroupUp. You know, so that the data is kind of just crossing over between all these different platforms, and it's a case of bringing people together. And that's one of the things I've done, is I've given Ubuntu their own version of the Coeo platform. I don't know, have you seen the different websites that use Coeo? So there's...
Yeah, I've seen some of the subdomains that you have, like the ASC.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, there's a few other sites. There's fullcircleproject.net is one, and then ubuntuplanet.org. And when you go onto those sites, you'll see that they're Coeo sites, but they're branded. You know, the Ubuntu one is branded as the Ubuntu website. And again, I'm trying to set this up so that Ubuntu can have their identity. You know, they can be Ubuntu, they can have the Ubuntu branding, it can be their website. But at the same time, there's a collaboration where the people who are posting things on the Ubuntu website are also having access to members and posts and things from other websites in the network. And it's just about sharing the data and the information between all the different groups, I think.
Yeah. Have you ever done OAuth 2 before?
I've just set up OAuth. I've actually set up an OAuth, so you can now actually log into a website using an OAuth through Coeo.
So integration with another OAuth, but not rolling out your own.
I've used a kind of an open source off GitHub. I found a PHP OAuth system which I based it on. So I've actually got that working. So I've only used it on one website so far, but there is a website now which has a login with Coeo button on it, which you can actually then log into that website with your Coeo account.
Cool.
And yeah, that's using OAuth. So yeah, you could have a login with Coeo button on GroupUp. Again, you know, everyone's got login with Facebook on their websites. I'd like to replace that with login with Coeo, so that, you know, people are logging into all these different websites with their Coeo account.
Yeah. Or whatever it is that ends up being the common authentication and database system.
Exactly.
Because yeah, I think what comes up in this, and it was talking with Chris a bit and the new map team. They're out here in Colorado for a little bit towards the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was, it seemed like there was a lot of like different projects and there was so much overlap in it, but it was difficult to find that commonality. And, you know, in some way, and there's a little bit of controversy maybe over this right now, but even just like, I think we can all kind of agree is like, it'd be really nice if we could come up with a data standard and, you know, have a group of people or a person just handle, you know, how the data gets stored. And that's why I see some, and this is another one of those hybrid models, you know, it's like Chris was bringing up doing distributed internet using potentially like Holochain or Ethereum and IPFS and doing types of distributed platforms that way. And I see a lot of value in that. However, and I think that you can understand this too, based on graph networks and, you know, social networks, it's also really nice to be able to have a central repository of all that information to pull from and know that it's going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
There's the current networks, at least in the United States, I don't know how they are out there in Europe, but in the United States, it's just, there can't be that they're not that reliable enough to say, hey, you can host all of your information at your house.
Yeah.
But
I would say the same. I looked into all sorts of distributed, you know, options for actually, you know, where the data would be stored, and I just felt it's coming, but we're not ready for it yet. You know,
yeah,
it's a few years away still, I think, and I think, you know, for now at least, we need to be just kind of doing it the old school way for a bit longer.
yeah. Well, with the plan of how it will eventually transition to that. And that's why I get really excited because thinking about it a little bit more about hearing what Chris was talking about distributed internet. I had been kind of working on this a little bit, but I got really inspired. I get inspired being around people who think in different ways because it inspires ideas in me that think a little bit differently. But like using IPFS and essentially like bookmarking or saving contents, creating a backup on your hard drive at your house. So I'm actually integrated right now with it's called YouTube DL, and it's pretty much integrated with any site that has video on it, where you can download the video, and essentially because you're bookmarking it, you can save it to your device at your house. And so instead of content being distributed by a cloud-based platform, you can actually host all of the videos by a distributed platform like a peer-to-peer network, which creates a much more redundant way for how information is stored and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of great interest in that, especially with like 2 months ago. I don't know if you know, but AWS went down for a day. And it just goes to show the fragility of the network.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I actually use AWS for backups and things. So I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, the S3 platform, they had a misconfiguration file that got pushed out, and a bunch of the servers went down, and yeah, most sites, it was pretty funny because it was over half of the internet just like wouldn't work because it's all relying on S3.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it just goes to show like that single point of failure, it just isn't really resilient or a long-term solution. But again, it provides a lot of value right now because that's seemingly the most resilient way to do it in the moment. And I think, like I said, building up a very good distributed platform could replace that. Maybe not replace, but provide a really good synergistic relationship too. But that takes a lot of work. The other interesting thing that I have with this is, and I think you probably would recognize this too, is like most people don't really want to pay for software when it comes down to it. Like even people paying for Spotify or something like that, where it's $10 a month, and it mostly goes to support the artist. I think most people just like, oh, it should just work. It should just be free. And I don't know, I kind of have this long-term interest of like, I have a curiosity around like, with Apple, Steve Jobs and Wozniak, they started in their garage selling computers. Bill Gates was kind of a little bit similar. It's like they both, Microsoft and Apple, essentially were software companies, and they just also had to make hardware, or maybe the other way around with them. They were more hardware companies, and they just happened to have to make software on top of it. Anyway, my kind of thought process is, well, maybe this is really like a new type of operating system that's coming into being, and maybe we could, I don't like talking about marketing all that much, marketing or capitalizing, but money is a very real part of this in the moment. And, it's like, well, I've already looked into speccing it out. I work with BeagleBone, which is an ARM-based like mini computer that's like $40.
Okay.
Attach like a terabyte hard drive to it, and you can get like a system up and running off the shelf components for like $120. And so I have a curiosity of, maybe if there's enough people, enough interest to actually kind of put it out there as like a new type of operating system for the internet. Because it essentially could be. And there's some really interesting monetary potentials in this. Like, so how Spotify is like, hey, $10 a month based on how many plays each of the songs gets, it distributes the money that way. Well, you could use the same type of model to distribute money to content creators on the internet, more than just music, more than just video. It could be blog articles. The most similar thing that's out there right now is Steam, which is a Bitcoin based.
I've had a look at that, because actually one of the features that I've had requests from for Coeo is I've had a lot of alternative media journalists saying to me they want somewhere where they can publish articles.
Yeah.
So that's actually something I'm looking at building into Coeo, is an article publishing facility in there, which is really just an extended post. It's a post with more content, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe some prettier images, better layouts. Yeah.
Yeah. What I really don't like with a lot of these sites, I mean, for me, the money side of things is very much a sort of I'd like to be able to do it without getting involved in money at all.
Right.
Unfortunately, I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got a family to support. We're all, we all need money at this point. So I don't want to cover the website in advertising. I think advertising is just, I hate it. I really hate it. So that, I'm at the moment thinking of ways that I can, actually, I'll be straight with you, Coeo at the moment is actually costing me money.
I'm in the same place too.
I'm not getting enough in donations to even cover the hosting costs at the moment.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah, so, I'm out of pocket every month.
And not to mention the time that we put in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I need to make money out of it somehow, just enough to get by. Advertising is not an option. The only thing I feel comfortable with is a kind of, crowdfunding, gifting side of things where the members contribute. But again, I've got 36,000 members on Coeo, and if they gave $1 each, that would pay my salary for a year, and I could work on it full time. But you put out a message, saying I need some funding or whatever, and it's like less than 1% respond, and I find it frustrating that people are all talk, and when it actually comes to doing anything or giving a couple of dollars, donations, it's hard to actually get people to take that step and actually do something.
It's like pulling teeth.
It is, isn't it? So. And again, I've actually had a few offers from people wanting to invest in Coeo. One guy came to me about a year ago, and he loved what I was doing. He said, I'd like to become a partner with you in Coeo, like a business partner. And I said, well, and he offered to invest $100,000 to become a partner with me. And I kind of said to him, well, that would be great, and I would love to have that kind of money to be able to work with. but I said to him, you know, if you're willing to put that sort of money into it, you must see a value in it. You know, what's the value to you? And you know, he came straight out with it, and he said, you know, oh, it's, you know, the data, all those users, that data's valuable, sort of thing. You know, it's like you've got thousands of users on there that, and just the data's valuable. And I said to him, it just doesn't sit well with me. You know, it's, you know, profiting from the user's data is just not an option.
Right.
So, and obviously, I mean, that, you know, you look at the value of sites like Facebook. I mean, it's, you know, obviously the user's data is hugely valuable. I mean, they say with Facebook, you know, the people who use it are the, you know, Facebook's not the product, we're the product.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it is a struggle, and I think at the moment I only really feel comfortable going down the kind of gifting, kind of crowdfunding route in terms of making money out of it.
Yeah, I have kind of like a re-envisioning of the advertisement model, where it's not like an in-your-face thing. It's not tracking you everywhere you go on the internet to advertise directly to you. But the idea is like internet not good. The idea is like you promote to a group. So I live in the city of Boulder. The city of Boulder has a page. The different businesses or organizations that want to get their message out to the people in the Boulder community can do that directly to the Boulder community. It's because you're part of the group that you're wanting to advertise to. So it's like, for example, my roommate writes conscious bedtime stories for children. Now there would be probably like a conscious parenting group where in that group, there would want to be all the different people who are doing marketing or selling products. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And like, hey, give them a way to get their product out there. And it brings a level of like coherency to it. And so instead of like, you know, an algorithm that's tracking you and trying to decide what to show you next, it puts the keys in your hand, and it makes it able so that you can browse and find the things that you'd be interested in. That's the way that's like a general philosophy that I'm kind of looking at this, at least in the moment.
Sure, yeah. And obviously with Coeo being very much geographic based, it's an obvious avenue for local, you know, local level businesses to promote local businesses that operate, you know, only in a specific town. Because again, I totally get it. You're actually only promoting ethical businesses to people who it's relevant to,
right?
Who are in the area.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I'm absolutely all for promoting, you know, ethical, conscious businesses. I mean, that's what we should be doing. And if they're willing to pay for that advertising space, if you want to call it that, then
I like promoting.
Yeah, that's definitely. There's actually there's a project I'm working on here in the UK. I'll just very briefly mention it. It's sort of a side project that I'm doing, but it's kind of going to be linked into Coeo. We're looking at independent currencies, local currencies. I don't know whether you have anything similar there, but here we have certain towns in the UK have their own currency. So there's a town near me called Lewis, and they have something called the Lewis pound. And it's a currency for the town, and you can only spend it in local businesses in that town. And it's a bit of a sort of touristy thing, you know, tourist attraction. You come to Lewis and you get your Lewis pounds and you spend them in Lewis, kind of thing. But there's actually a lot more to it than that, because it's all about encouraging people to shop locally, shop with local businesses that accept the local currency. So we're working on a project that will actually basically introduce the possibility of local currencies for every town in the country, where and again, it's about targeting those local businesses that are ethical, local, family-run businesses, encouraging them to accept this new currency, and then that's the sort of the basis of it. But we're also looking at incorporating things like time banking and things into that as well, so you can exchange time credits for the local currency and things like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that, and there's a lot of opportunities in that. I don't think it's going to be as much as a problem as the current financial model of every country having their own currencies, because it's all manipulated. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like there actually is a lot of value in having like a local currency that actually is representative of the health and vitality, essentially the health and vitality of that region. So you can be a little bit more, kind of like, like an experimental kind of like, this is how this place is developing, and this is how it's a reflection of the overall health of the community, I think, just in
Sure,
general.
yeah. I mean, it's all transitional though, because I mean, obviously, I mean, I think it's obvious we need to be moving towards no money, a completely resource-based gift.
Yeah.
But again, again, all these groups who say it's happening, yes, it's great, it's happening, everyone's waking up. They're all in their little closed groups on Facebook. And, when I go out and I pick the kids up from school and then, I'm out in the real world, I see the other parents picking their kids up, and I just realize that we're so far from that.
Yeah.
I think the real problem with people in our kind of movements who, because they only mix with other people who are kind of conscious and awake, they think the world's waking up. And when you actually go out on the street, you realize very quickly that actually we're just a million miles from that.
Yeah. I feel like there's like movement, and I feel it a little bit more just because I'm in this intentional community. And so I'm actually kind of seeing on the ground level people kind of starting to come together and make these changes and come together for political action, for sustainability action. I'm starting to see those types of things. But in general, like most places, like I feel like I'm in a pretty special pocket here, even in Colorado, of people who are conscious, awake, and trying to change things. Going pretty much anywhere else is just like, wow, there's still a lot to be done. And I think that's the biggest part of this though, is, it's like, so yeah, you're from physics, you'll understand nature is continuous. You have differential equations that represent, how heat is going to diffuse through a metal or something like that. And it's always happens in a continuous nature. And I think that we can look at the evolution of consciousness in a similar type of way. So, we're going from like this level individualism to this level of community and working together type of mentality. I look at it as like single cell consciousness to multicellular consciousness. And so it's like, well, okay, we're evolving. If you look at the chart of collective consciousness like this, and it gets to, that level, how do you change the rate at which that happens? And that, I think, is the only thing that you can really do. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a message that even gets put out there or anything like that. I think it actually comes from people's actual experiences. Yeah. And that's my feeling of like, really, I think what is going to heal the world is people getting together and having conversations, not necessarily on the internet. I think that provides a lot of value. But I think really the resonance is built in having conversations. It's like we're over the computer right now, but in some way I can at least hear the inflections in your voice and your passion and these types of things. There's so much communication that's happening more than just the language. And I think the more that people get together and have these conversations and share their experiences and share their difficulties and what they're working on, I think that's, where community gets built, where these levels of resonance happen.
And then, So no, I was going to say, it comes right back to the original objective for me of Coeo, which is getting people together off the internet. I'm trying to build a website to stop people using the internet. Right.
Which is a really interesting thing, because it's like, well, then you're not trying to, because most applications on the internet are developed in a way to get people engaged and coming back. But the truth is, it's like, well, if you build it that way, then people aren't going to come back. And what's really, it's such an interesting edge. I've been dealing with that too.
It is. I'll just quickly tell you a little, I mean, for me, I experienced it because in my town here, there are about 15, 20 people who've actually signed up to Coeo who are within 10 miles of me. None of them I knew before. They're all people I didn't know. So it's kind of worked for me. It's actually done the original objective was for me to find other people, and it's kind of worked. But I met up down a local pub down the road about 4 or 5 months ago with about 5 or 6 people who had joined Coeo in the area. We went to the pub and we met, and none of us had met each other before, and it was absolutely the atmosphere. It was like just so good. And we were chatting in the pub, and it was just a small local pub. And then the people on the next table were like, they kind of came over and said, we heard what you're talking about. It sounds really interesting. And then the guy working behind the bar got involved. And like suddenly the whole pub was talking about, you know, all this consciousness stuff. And,
That's awesome.
and that just doesn't happen online.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't make that kind of connection with people. And I think probably we did more in that sort of couple of hours in a pub to actually wake other people up, because we were talking to people who were just, you know, other regular users of the pub, and they had no idea what we were talking about, but they were really interested. And I think they could sense the energy amongst us. They could sense that there was, you know, something special about what we were talking about and the energy that we had, and it attracted them. They came over to us to ask what it was we were talking about. So I think that to me is still the number one objective for me, is to actually stop people using Facebook, stop people using the internet altogether, turn their computer off, get outside and talk to their neighbor, talk to other people in their community.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, I feel like what we're building is actually a reflection of the technology that is inherently within us. And so my experience of like going to music festivals and like not carrying a phone with me at all and just kind of being in the flow, you know, I think like we get we connect to that internet where when we're at a festival, when there's not walls built up around us, you know, thin little sheets that are tents, you know? And it's so fascinating just like being in that space and just like, okay, I'm in it and I'm listening to what's up, and there's no time. I go where I want, and I feel like I'm in the right place of where I need to be at all times. And it just feels really beautiful. And it's like, I'd love for that type of existence to be able to translate to cities. But the problem is like, we have all these walls built up around us, you know, and how do we, it seems like the internet is almost like the way, like a direct portal into your neighbor's house. You know, it's like an extension of that right now.
Well, you say that. I mean, I probably communicate more with my neighbor through Facebook than I do actually speaking to them. And they, you know, my neighbour is probably about 10 meters away from me at the moment in the next house. Yeah. And I still probably communicate with them more through the internet than I do in the real world, and they're just next door. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Anyway, I'm going to have to wrap this up. I've just seen the time. I've actually got to be at training in 15 minutes. I've got an hour run session ahead of me.
Awesome.
Well,
I'd love to get into this a little bit more. I felt like this is more of an introductory type of talk, and I really appreciate it. I feel like that sets a really good groundwork to really understand where we're coming from. Yeah, I'd love to get into some more tech talk details and stuff in the future. I'm actually in this process right now, you know, trying to find this balance between working on what I'm passionate about, which I feel like is, I feel like the reason why I'm here, like, I feel like I know that. And it's been really difficult for me to like know the feel like why I'm here, but also have to like be like, okay, well now I have to do this to make money so I can do what I'm here to do. So I'm actually taking like a 2-week kind of a little bit of a hiatus from working on GroupUp related stuff to work on the real-time race tracking. I'm implementing a new map system for them, which is really cool. By the way, if you want to check it out, it's Mapbox GL. It uses WebGL. So you can do some really, really awesome animations in just JavaScript, essentially. Pretty amazing. Like I'm doing I got really excited. This is why I know I'm still in love with programming. You know, it's like 9:00 at night last night. I just started working with this new map system, and the day before I'm like, oh wow, I think I could actually like make this happen, where like, because we have the course plotted around, and we also have elevation data. And WebGL allows you to do 3D animations and stuff. So I'm like, it'd be so cool if like over the course, like hovering is like the elevation profile. And so like you could rotate around the map and see the elevation of the course as it's like going over the terrain. It's like, I'm like, oh wow, that'd be so cool. And so I started working on that last night. And so, yeah, that's how I know, like, I love programming, and I feel like it's what I'm here to do. I love making things. I love like pushing the
Yeah.
edge of what's possible. And yeah, so anyway, I'm doing that for a couple weeks.
No, that's cool. Yeah, definitely. Well, look, let's you give me a shout when you want to talk again. You know, if you want to sort of wait 2 or 3 weeks, whenever's good for you. I'm generally about Tuesdays, Fridays are normally the best days to catch me, but I'm always here. So just drop me a message on Facebook, and
That's the
say
best
that
way.
we're still using Facebook, aren't we?
Yeah.
So yeah, drop me a message, and yeah, maybe next time we can get into a bit more technical stuff, you know, about databases and APIs and things like that, and see what the potentials are there.
Yeah. So, I mean, really quick though, it's like you talked about doing different local currencies, digital currencies. Have
Mhm.
you found much interest in the Coeo community around Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I mean, one of the few bits of your GroupUp platform that I've really looked at is the funding stuff. The Coinbase integration. I really like that. I certainly love the idea of being able to do micropayments without the fees, which is really good, because I think there's a real potential where I'm building a database of projects within Coeo, and I think there's a lot of potential for members within Coeo to be able to fund projects with micropayments. You know, if you've got enough members, and you know, they just donate a few pence each or a few cents each. You know, it's got a lot of potential there. I'm also looking at just for I don't know yet whether this is going to be popular, but I'm looking at sort of slightly gamifying the platform in terms of adding kind of so you get XP for doing different things like posting and commenting and rating, and even just logging in, you get XP, and then you get different levels, and then when you get different levels, you then get more
Badges.
like rights,
Whatever.
badges, but also rights to do stuff. Like you can then become, you might become an editor who can actually then moderate or moderator or something when you get to a certain level, and actually reward people.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of ideas that I've got.
Oh yeah, I could go on and on for hours about different really cool
Yeah,
ways that this could go, and I think we both can. And I think
yeah.
that's going to be the really interesting overlap of what we might be able to do. And I don't know, I just want to put this out there. It's like, yeah, I feel like I am maybe a little bit attached to GroupUp. However, I feel like and it sounds like you did the exact same thing. You kind of like you worked on it, and you kind of like tried to put it out there as quick as possible,
Yeah,
with a little bit of long-term foresight, but not like long-term
yeah.
foresight. And I don't know, I feel like I built a lot of tools, but the
Hmm.
thing is like it might actually, and if the money were there, because one of the mantras that I'm working on right now is I have enough time. I'm trying to get out of this place of like feeling like I have to go, do, get it done as quick as possible, or else the world's going to explode. I'm trying to get out of that space. And I feel like what might actually be the best actually is to maybe just not necessarily start from scratch, but using a lot of the tools that have been built so far, saying here are the different pieces. Now we know that what they all are, because that's what I've been in this journey too. It's like, oh yeah, this thing, it needs to be out of here, and this thing. And I feel like there's enough of those pieces visible now in these
Yeah,
different platforms to be like, okay, we have these different pieces, and let's start from the ground up with this long-term vision of how it could potentially go. Because I think, the idea with a program, this is a programmer is like you build the tools to be reusable over time. And
sure.
so, it makes your life easier in development later. And ideally.
Yeah,
And so I don't know, I have this interest of like, starting from the ground up with a really solid team. I think that we could build something uh, past what both of us and other people like Chris and NewMap have built so far in a matter of like less than a year, easy.
yep,
And
yeah,
I think if we just have a core team and get enough funding to support that, and just even, I don't want to say blow up, but maybe just like, us all kind of working together on a common platform that might not be any of these individual platforms that we're working on right now,
hmm,
might be the best solution. I'm willing to let go what I've built on GroupUp so far to move in that direction, if that's what brings us together to make this happen, because I'm quite honestly, I'm kind of tired of working on my own. It's really draining.
It's draining. Tell me about it. It's draining. I know. Yeah. Well, let's talk again when you're ready. Give me a shout in a couple of weeks. We'll talk again. I mean, the timing for me is right to be having these conversations, because, as I said, I'm very much at a stage of restructuring now. I'm just in the early stages of taking what I've got with my SQL stuff and starting to think about how to make it work in Mongo and with APIs and things. So the time is right for me to be having these conversations and talking about these kind of collaborations, definitely. So
yeah. Sorry, I keep dragging this on, but just really quick, what do you feel like your greatest gifts are, and what would you feel the most passionate about working on a platform? I know you're working on everything as a full stack person right now, and that has its own value and awesomeness to it, but is there anything that's particularly calling to you?
I don't know. I do love the sort of databasing side of stuff. I actually love that stuff, and understanding how the data relates and stuff. But I actually probably think there are other people who are probably better at that than me. It's probably not the thing I'm actually best at. Actually, probably my artistic design side of things is probably where I'm potentially most useful in a way, because I think a lot of programmers lack that.
Yeah.
And I think I've got a pretty. I've learned over the last few years that end users are very intolerant of anything that isn't familiar to them, which is why I have concerns about something like NewMap. NewMap is just too different. No one will get it. No one will understand it. So I guess kind of user interface kind of stuff is probably where, and the design side of stuff and layout is kind of the area that I probably have the most to give, I think, in that area. The areas where I could probably do with the most help is understanding databasing and that side of things, because I love it. I mean, just to put you in the picture, 2 months ago, I didn't even know what NoSQL was. Literally, I've been working with MySQL for the last 20 years nearly.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that NoSQL existed until a few months ago. And I've had a very steep learning curve just in the last couple of months, where I've figured out what NoSQL, how it works. I've learned all the Mongo stuff, and I've figured out that that's the way I need to be going. But I'm very much not an expert in those areas, and that's the area where I probably need the most help.
Okay. And just in general, and back-end infrastructure, where would you say that you're at in that?
The back end stuff, I mean, generally is the stuff where I need help.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bit that I actually am best at is the front end user interface side of stuff, and I've kind of taught myself through necessity, how to handle the back end stuff, really.
Okay. Cool.
I learned pretty quickly, I think sort of academic scientific background, I can learn new things pretty quickly. So
yeah. I mean, and that's what I saw in Coeo, is just a relatively simple but beautiful and functional user interface, which I really appreciate. It's a really easy to be like, oh yeah, I get it. To just hop on there and be like, yep, okay.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that, and I see that, and I see you're very good at that. And so thank you for bringing your skills and talents and sharing this, because I feel like it's brought so many people together already.
I mean, it is working. I get a lot of feedback from people who've had good experiences as a result of the website. They've come to me and they've said, I've met these amazing people thanks to your website and stuff. So I know it's working, and I know people are finding it useful. So that's what keeps me going. Because to be honest with you, it is a struggle. But
right, it's that one person that makes a comment every week or two that just like lights you up, and you're like, oh, thank you. I finally feel seen. That's what it is for me. It's like I feel seen.
Yeah, someone appreciates what we're doing. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I must go. I've
Yeah.
literally got 3 minutes before I've got to be out the door, so I'll talk again soon.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I'll be
Yeah,
in contact.
yeah,
All
you
right.
too.
Peace,
Bye.
brother. Love you.